When you're having a great day and minding your own business, when life suddenly hits you hard. Hello, today I will be doing a video on I Hate Suzie. A wife, mother, and public figure, Suzie Pickles, has to deal with a life-altering and embarrassing discovery that the media has gotten a hold of. I went into this not knowing what had happened to her and what she was dealing with, which I think is the best way to watch the show. Because through the first episode, you're basically in the same position as Suzie, and you find out everything when she does. Everything is from her perspective, and everything feels disoriented. The episode does a good job at showing visuals that represent what a character is feeling: embarrassment, confusion, devastation, anxiety to the point where you have to rush to the bathroom because it's so much to handle. The toilet scene in particular was strangely graphic and realistic and made me uncomfortable. Was it necessary to show everything? You hear the pooping sounds, you see the character wipe themselves. It's very unpleasant to watch. Episode 2. Suzie and her husband try to work out their relationship after what happened by attending therapy. Suzie is also worried about going to a fan convention from one of her acting gigs. I liked how they showed woman on woman misogyny. I feel like that isn't addressed as much. The episode starts out okay and promising, and then Suzie is having a drug soiree with a weird older man. I wasn't really feeling it. It was weird and obnoxious, and I still can't tell if this is supposed to be a drama or a black comedy. Episode 3. I'm starting to think that this is supposed to be a drama, because it's lacking humor. If it's going to be a drama, it needs to be more sophisticated in the way they handle the characters. Suzie is now facing her acting career derailing because of the drama that ensued. It's very obvious where the story is going to go with the husband and the relationship and a possible love triangle. The husband, in my opinion, is way too forgiving. Suzie is becoming more and more unlikable, which is a shame because we have to follow her everywhere on the show. The entire show is surrounded by her, obviously, but it's really hard to feel sorry for her more and more. Episode 4 is dedicated to the main character masturbating and trying to finish while fantasizing about her husband and other men to prove to herself that she wasn't in love with someone else. This is a good example of a gag running on for too long. Literally 70% of the episode is dedicated to this, and I was tempted to fast forward. Episode 5. This is the first episode since the first episode that was really entertaining. One woman gets stood up on a date, and Suzie talks to God about keeping her Disney gig. Suzie's friend actually feels like a character for the first time with her own problems instead of the trusty sidekick making phone calls every 5 minutes and giving one-liners. And this was the first time since the first episode that made the show promising, and it kept me from turning it off completely and forgetting about doing a review on this altogether. And oh boy, I regret that so much. Episode 6. The main character goes to a family wedding after hearing news about her Disney job. It was boring and didn't do anything for the main plot. It felt like filler. I also thought the same sex scene was forced. I noticed that a lot of shows and movies nowadays try to be super inclusive, but I don't know. I personally don't like it. It's almost like they're checking a box. And this was right after the episode that was really good, and so for it to not start off right after that and go into something completely different was very, very disappointing. Episode 7. I'm starting to notice a common theme with this show. The opening for each episode is promising, and then the rest doesn't do anything. It's filler. Why is this a mini-series? This could have easily been a 2-hour movie, because everything else feels like deleted scenes you could see on the DVD extras. It's really ridiculous. If they were going to do a miniseries, it could have been 4 episodes instead of 8. And the episode is basically the lead character finding out that a man who isn't her husband and claims to love her, has been sleeping with other women. So she finds out that she's not as special as she thought she was, and she has a mental breakdown, which was the highlight, but it took so long to get there. It's a classic case of the stereotype that women just don't know what they want. Like, she didn't want this man, or she secretly does want this man, but she doesn't want to be with him, but she doesn't want this other man that she does not want to be with other women. It's like she's all over the place and she's a freaking mess, and it shows. And it was entertaining. Also, her son has violent tendencies towards animals, and I don't know why the heck that isn't being addressed. Every time they show this kid, he's doing something weird, or he's like in the background, but when you actually see him interacting with other characters, he's doing something like dysfunctional. Like, he's spitting at animals, he's harming animals. This kid's a little psycho. And I'm guessing he's not a threat because he's deaf, and his parents aren't really addressing this, and I'm scratching my head. Something is seriously wrong with this kid. Maybe he can pick up on the relationship between his parents, and he's reacting to that in the outside world. Why aren't they addressing this? Episode 8, the final episode. Oh boy, what a lackluster finale to a subpar show. A few things happen that I can't get into grave detail about because of spoilers, but basically the husband has resentment to Suzie, and Suzie finds out that her friend has some resentment towards her, and basically Suzie does not grow as a person. It's very unclear where her life is gonna go afterwards. And I'm completely bored with her at this point. And you can't even use the excuse that because of what happened to her in the first episode, her having to deal with that, that's not even an excuse for her being a bad person or being a selfish person, because if she wasn't a bad person before the show started and didn't make certain decisions, she wouldn't have been in this predicament. So she's just a very flawed person, and not in a forgiving way, in my opinion. I think she's very draining and not even in an entertaining way. And I think a lot of that has to do with the writing. Her character, or the show overall, had a lot of potential. Like, they had a lot of good themes going, but they didn't do anything with it. Instead, a good percentage of the show is just Suzie sulking and looking miserable. I don't know, it just felt very shallow. And I think a show like this either needed more sophisticated writing or it needed more humor. The whole show had this vibe where, like, the whole atmosphere, because of the direction, feels like there should be a lot more jokes, a lot more comedy. Morbid comedy would have worked for this tremendously, but it doesn't. Instead, it tries to play off like a drama with some comedy aspects sprinkled in very far and few in between, but the whole show really needed to have something to elevate this, and it doesn't. And I don't even know if I would recommend it. I mean, maybe out of curiosity, but it was just such a boring show for the majority of the time. Although I will say that the taxi scene that happens with her arguing with the taxi driver, I thought that was funny. I thought the first episode was good. So there are good things about it, but they're just so far and few that it doesn't make up for the whole show. And I have to give it like a 2 out of 10.